Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to gather a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world one character at a time. And it all starts with one thing: a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. To gain that understanding, I am mining the intersection of psychology, theology, and philosophy to make you a better writer. This is episode 125, Zettelkasten, creating main cards on the functional categories of the struggle. Today, I am not in the midst of answering questions. So we're going to return to the path that we were on, which is the idea of using my book, Writing with Emotion, as a means of setting down the base book, the fundamental book that we're going to use in the process of syntopical reading, where we read more than one book at a time. This book is the foundation book because it is very organized. I come from a mathematical and a computer science background, and organization is my buzzword. So I'm bringing that to the Zettelkasten so it's easy to see how the cards are formed. And then, as you've already seen, we've pulled in several cards to show how the different sources interact, how the ideas impact one another and explode and make the Zettelkasten a genuine communication tool where you can practically communicate with yourself through the Zettelkasten. Well, today is a peaceful day. We are going to make some solid cards that start to lay out this book and will be a foundation for some more cards that we'll pull in from the other sources, and then we'll see a little bit of explosion in the numbering. But here's we're going to see how the base numbering goes down. It's a bit of a review, and it gives us a chance to talk a little bit about what this book is saying, because that's kind of the fun part. I hope you enjoy it too. For me, it's the fun part. The Zettelkasten is the tool, but it gives you a way of really understanding the tool if you've got something that you're working with that is coherent. Okay, so here we go now. We talked to set this up a few days ago, and then I had so many questions to answer on the Zettelkasten that we got sidetracked for several days. We're here in this book, and we are approaching a very interesting divide that we did explain in an earlier video, where the book on page 12 introduces the 4 character trait groups that are then broken down in a lot more detail beginning there on page 38. So what you have in the book is you have the same material covered in an introductory fashion on page 12 and 13, and then beginning in detail running from page 38 clear to the end of the book. So obviously we're not going to get that far today, but we're going to cover today basically is page 12 and show you how that falls into the character traits as they have been placed into the Zettelkasten. So we're picking up with this card 4D. 4D came from a mix of information on page 12 and over on 4D. We borrowed the term, the taxonomy of the character traits, from the page 36, because that's really the introduction to the whole rest of the book. And then we are going to scoot back to page 12, where we did a general introduction. And you might ask, well, why are they split up like that? And the answer is that the whole middle of the book is telling you how to use the character traits in your writing. And so we had to have some character traits to talk about. But this back section is kind of like a reference area where all the traits are laid out. Obviously, it would be way too boring to go through all of them, even though the traits themselves are tremendously exciting. But if our focus is on the Zettelkasten, and the patterns are going to repeat over and over. So we're going to lay down a few rather than laying down them all, since they were going to be quite similar. So we're going to focus on the material on page 12 right now if you have your book. So we're going to continue. We've already seen this card, 4D. We created it a while back. And 4D has a directory card of the 4 character traits themselves: resilience, balance, insight, empathy, and 2 side. We already saw 2 side natures popping in, and that gave us 2 additional child cards off of 4D, card 5 and card 6. So now we're going to come back, and today we're going to pick up 4D1 and 4D2. That's as far as we'll get tonight. But you can see in a very simple, direct way how the effortless numbering system is just working smoothly here. So for card 4D1, we're talking about this amazing subgroup called the resilient subgroup. The resilient subgroup is about the character against the difficult physical world. Survival, getting enough food, getting shelter, not getting eaten by a tiger, not getting bitten by a snake, just getting through the hard part of life. It goes all the way back to primitive survival, and there's a lot in the physical environment all the way up to today. These struggles of the resilient subgroup are common from the earliest man all the way up to current times. And so the main part of this is the struggle is what drives the entire taxonomy. And for this whole group of character traits, the struggle is against physicality. We're not talking people, we're not talking self-control here, and we're not talking wisdom or insight or the ability to understand the world. We're just talking about getting through the physical world. So that is our 4D1 group. And if you've looked on page 12, you'll notice right away that that group has 2 subgroups. It has a subgroup called the courage subgroup and a second subgroup called the power subgroup. So because that structure is so visible there on page 12, we can go right away and immediately make our directory card with our first 2 entries. Who knows what will come in and be a card C in the future. But right now we just need A and B. So let's take a look at the courage subgroup. The courage subgroup, 4D1A, you see how the cards are just growing smoothly, calmly, easily. And the courage subgroup is an interesting one. It's when your approach to the world just takes guts. There's just no 2 ways about it. It just takes guts. You're dealing with the obstacles of life, and this is when the world seems bigger than you, or the world seems bigger than your character. The character feels like an underdog. And in the second group, the group 4D1B, it's still a struggle against the physical world, but now it's the case of, well, what happens when you come out on the winning side of that struggle? Is it coast is clear now? Ho, 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 I wish it were, but it isn't. Not for our character in a story. A whole nother group of challenges comes in once success is achieved, because how are status and influence going to be put to use by our character? How is our character going to cope with winning? So that's the second subgroup. So you see, we began, can you see the taxonomy now? The 4D was all of the character traits. 4D1 are the character traits that fight against the physical world. 4D1A are when the physical world seems bigger and winning. 4D1B are when the character seems to be winning against the physical world. So you see how the struggle just kind of breaks down into finer and finer groups? When we dive down into the individual character traits, we'll expand these even more. But this is as far as we're going to go for resilience tonight. But we will, just to reinforce these basic ideas, go one step further and take a look at the balance subgroup. When you're dealing with the balance subgroup, where this is the character's struggle to live with himself, within himself. You know, the one relationship that you can never escape from is the relationship that we have with ourselves. There's no getting out of that one. We've got to live with ourselves our whole lives. Well, how good are we at living with ourselves? That's what the balance struggles are all about. Can we get ourselves under control? And there's a really interesting word. When you think of that word balance, you think of a teeter-totter with two ways of going, and that somehow you want to keep it even keel in the middle. And that's true. That's why that word is chosen that way, because the balance subgroup is an interesting group in which you can fail on two ways. There's two ways to fail. You can fail on the side of chaos, where you lose control, and that's, things fly off and life gets out of hand, and our character starts to lose control of his environment and himself. And it can also fail in terms of rigidity. The control gets a little too tight. Our character can't move. Our character is stunted and can't develop because he's just too rigid. So there's two kinds of failure with balance. You don't want to be too rigid, and you don't want to fly off into too much chaos. And so let's take a look now. That's that whole subgroup, that whole balance subgroup has that characteristic of needing to find a balance between two possible lost states. So let's take a look at those subgroups. And if we're still on page 12 today, and here you can see on page 12, if you look, there are three subgroups coming out of the balance group: the self-regulation, the attention, and the self-assessment. We'll go into those in just a moment, but because those three subgroups were very, very clearly laid out there on page 11, we were able to make our directory card immediately without thinking about what they mean at first. Okay, so now let's go into the individual subgroups that were identified. There's the self-regulation subgroup, and that has to do with our character's ability to control his own actions. And this is, if our character makes up his mind to do something, is he going to be able to do it? If I make New Year's resolutions for myself, are they going to be gone and out the window by February 2nd? To what degree can our character get himself to obey? Now, if you think about it, this has two sides. He can be so rigid that I made up my mind, I'm going to do this, and it wouldn't matter that some other wonderful opportunity very worth taking was available. Nope, he made up his mind, he's going to do this. Or is it just, I can't get himself to do what he wants to do, and can't make him get out of bed when he needs to get out of bed? Those are the two ways that those self-regulation, the character traits within that subgroup, behave. Let's take a look at another one of the subgroups. Another subgroup is the attention subgroup. Now this one is rather interesting. It's about giving and receiving attention. We're going to turn out to find out that there's two character traits in the attention subgroup. One is about giving attention, the other is about receiving attention. But they both surround attention. Like, well, to what does our character pay attention, and to what degree does he seek or need attention from others? Is that the attention, the focus of our character? Does he walk into a room and have to have the attention of the room? Does he have self-focus, or can he focus on others? Is he self-reliant, or is he needy? These are the kinds of things that come under the attention subgroup. And for our third subgroup, in the balance, is a self-evaluation subgroup. And this is evaluating oneself, one's performance, and one's giftedness. Is our character crediting himself with being, tall and handsome? Did he make himself tall and handsome? Or is he properly understanding how he's doing? Is he properly understanding his own performance? So this is a really interesting group, because it's to what extent does our character have proper self-awareness? And there are some that one also breaks down into two traits. So that's as far as we're going to go for tonight. But did you see how straightforward that effortless numbering system works? We just have our main cards, and then we break them down into directory cards when we have a subgroup, and you can see how as the traits get more detailed, the numbers get longer. We go from number to letter to number to letter, and it's so easy. You never have to worry about where your next number is coming from. So that is all that we have for today, and I hope you enjoyed it. As always, as I am now doing, I want to remind you that all of these videos are now being included over on LilyPub. With this new one, that will be 37 videos, and they're being set up using the course capability of LilyPub, so that if you go over there to watch them, you can mark the ones you've completed and see the ones you haven't seen yet. And they're grouped and organized by topic. For example, this one on main cards, this will be our 7th video. So when I upload this one, that's going to go from a 6 to a 7. You could see the kind of break that we took between when we were last working in that area of the book and when we got back to it. Several other cards were podcasts took place. So over there in LilyPub, they're all grouped together, so you can find exactly the ones that you're interested in. So I hope to see you over there, and over in LilyPub, and if not, and even if so, I will see you back here tomorrow. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.